Good evening. Do you want to sit on this side?
I guess this isn't in the way. No, I'm just trying
No,
to.
it's not in the way.
This isn't in the way.
We'll sit behind you.
And make faces. Nice shirt, huh? Yeah.
Made a big difference. And the church shirt. How do you doing? I'm good. How you doing today, my brother? All right.
Well, I think we can start. Unless, are we streaming? We're streaming.
No, those sound good.
I'm gonna be not so rude and shut the doors.
Hello.
How are you? Excuse me.
You're good.
Okay. Hey. How are you? How are you? Okay. Last night of VBS. Glad to see it come. Glad to see it go.
Now the kids are enjoying it.
I think they are. If you get enough sugar in them, they're going to enjoy anything.
Oh, yeah, tell me about it. That's why my grandson don't get a lot of it. Because he's too hyper.
Wired. Okay, so we're going to pick up. What does that one look? Yeah, it's darker. That one's Gator Blue. No comment from Charlie. Okay, so we're going to actually start with the verses that we are studying in VBS instead of last first, because normally we run out of time. So I figured I'd take a little different philosophy and come at it a little bit differently. So immediately afterward, he compelled the disciples to get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side, while he sent the crowds away. After he had sent the crowds away, he went up on the mountain to pray by himself to pray. And when it was evening, he was there alone. But the boat was already long distant from the land, battered by the waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, "It's a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." So what was going on just before they got on the boat? He just preached. And he did something else after he preached.
He fed him.
He fed the 5,000. So he said, "You guys, you go on ahead." He sent the crowds away that they just fed because they weren't getting any more food. And then he went to pray. Now they went on, and when it was evening, he was there alone. In other words, when did they leave? Was it light or dark? It was probably light, because he sent the crowds away, he sent them on the way, and then it was evening. So it got dark. How about where it says the fourth watch of the night? How late is that?
Night.
Oh, it's night. You know what a watch is? It's not this. It comes from the Romans. You went on watch for 3 hours. So the first watch was from 6 to 9. The second watch from 9 to 12. The third watch from 12 to 3. And the fourth watch from 3 to 6 in the morning. So it's been a while since they left. It's been pretty close to what? That's 3 times 3, 3 times 4. It's 12 hours. Might be 13 hours. Might be 10 and a half hours. But it's been a while since he's left. So the boat is bound to be a fairly long distance from the land, isn't it? But he can still see it. So they're not making much headway. Now, what sea is this? Galilee. Right. So, this is the Sea of Galilee. And the darkest blue part in the middle is where it's deepest. And then, of course, the lighter green into the yellow is where it's shallow. Maximum depth is 114 feet, which is pretty good for a quote, sea. It's really not much of a sea, but it's a sea. And I was thinking we could have fun with math. That's what I say with my grandson. He says the same thing. Uh-oh. Okay, so we can figure out how wide and how long this particular lake was, which is called a sea, but it's more of a big lake. Latitudes. Latitudes go this away. Longitudes go this away. The longitude is about 1/10 of a degree. You look at 35.52 to 35.62 across the bottom. If 1 degree is 54.6 miles and it's 1/10 of a degree, how wide is it? Huh? 5.5 miles. And the latitude is about 1.18 degrees, but a latitude is 69 miles, not 54 miles. Can you do that in your head?
83 miles.
Huh?
83, 82.
How about 12 and a half?
Sorry. I think it said 1.18.
0.18. 0.18. So about 5.5 miles by 12.5 miles. And they've been rowing and everything for 12 hours across a sea that's 5.5 miles long. Not making a lot of headway, but they maybe they're halfway across. I mean, if somebody was out about 1.5 miles, down in Miami, you could look from the beach, and you could see ships out in the Gulf Stream. Not too far, a couple miles, but it was pretty easy to see them as they were going by. So maybe they're 2 miles, maybe they're a little bit more. So Peter responded and said to him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." And he said, "Come." Peter got out of the boat, walked on the water, and came towards Jesus. But seeing the wind, he became frightened, and when he began to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out with his hand and took hold of him and said to him, "You have little faith. Why did you doubt?" When they got in the boat, the wind stopped, and those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, "You are truly God's Son." So about how far did he have to walk, you think? At least a mile, maybe 2 miles on the water. That's pretty long, okay? Before he came on them with these guys, and they're rowing, and it's like, we're not making a whole lot of headway. Yeah.
Something I thought was interesting because they're rowing and not getting anywhere, and Mark's account said he was about to pass them by. Well, he was walking faster than they were rowing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Been there, done that, too. So, a miracle, obviously. They thought he was a ghost, but he wasn't. Why was it of little faith?
Because they didn't believe in him.
They didn't believe he could keep them out of the water. He started saying, "Oh, wait a minute now. Maybe this is a bad idea." Of course, that is Peter. And he jumped right in the middle of everything when he did it. But since you brought up Mark, Last part of Mark's rendition of it. When it was evening, the boat was in the middle of the sea, 2.25 miles. So that's about how far he walked, was 2.25 miles. And he was alone on the land. Seeing them straining on the oars, for the wind was against them, at about the 4th watch of the night, he came to them, walking on the sea, and he intended to pass by them. I don't know if he's going to wave, but he was intending to walk by. But when they saw him walking on the sea, they thought he was a ghost, and they cried out. For they all saw him and were terrified. But immediately he spoke to them and said to them, "Take courage, it is I, do not be afraid." Then he got into the boat with them, and the wind stopped, and they were utterly astonished. But they had not gained any insight from the incident of the loaves, for their hearts were hardened. So, why the difference in reactions? Matthew says one thing, Mark said something else. Mark leaves out Peter getting out of the boat too, but that's understandable. What did Mark write his Gospels mostly about? What did he emphasize? He emphasized miracles. He wrote to the Roman mind. He wrote to power. And certainly power is what's indicated by Christ. Matthew, on the other hand, wrote from a different perspective. He wrote to the Jewish mind. So there's a difference there. In Matthew's account, they said, as soon as they saw him, "You must be God." Mark says, well, they still really weren't on board. My perspective, Matthew's is the immediate response. Matthew was there. He saw it. Mark, he wasn't there. He's been inspired by the Spirit. Sometimes, you see something, you react, and then you think about it. You say, well, maybe I didn't see what I saw. Maybe I didn't hear what I thought I heard. And you start second guessing yourself. It's the only way I can explain the difference. Paul, you got any insight?
Well, I think you're right. The key there is that each of the disciples had a different perspective.
Yeah.
Because they came from a different venue to the mix. And so, like you said, Peter was very aggressive and he's going to be a part of it one way or another.
Yeah.
But some of the disciples, for example, Thomas, he was one that says, no, I got to see it to believe it.
Yeah.
So each one had a different view.
Had a different view. And of course, the Spirit can inspire someone, but it can't necessarily control what they're going to write. It's going to be their interpretation of what He's inspired them to understand about what happened. What were they struggling with? Besides the waves? Their faith, okay. What would you say a little bit more as far as what they were really struggling to understand?
How they were going to survive.
Well, how they were going to survive.
Yes. But versus, I'm out here. The only person I really can depend on is if I'm walking on the water.
But their initial response was to say, you must be the Son of God. And it seems like they pulled back from it. Why were they struggling with that?
I think it's because they had an expectation for the Messiah and what the Messiah was going to do, and he wasn't doing those things.
He didn't fit the mold.
Yeah.
He didn't fit the mold at all. And it's like, wait a minute, we aren't, He chose us. We're not the most stellar citizens of the Roman Empire. Why would God pick me? Don't we do that sometimes? Why would God listen to me? And I think that's what they're struggling with, and we struggle with it too. Of course, also, they're looking at it saying, could it really be the Messiah? Could this be the time that He's come here? And He's with us? Nah. Boy, he must be a prophet. But he's done some really crazy things.
When we come to a realization of something, the first thing we say is, what am I supposed to do with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, here I am, but why am I here? What am I supposed to do?
Yeah, what am I supposed to do?
So it's wild to think that we can have this right in front of their eyes. And see, we gotta look at it now, you know, like we were in then, you know, to like get that feeling of like that faith, like they can actually see like miracles and things he's doing, and like we have to go based off of what we read and what we hear. So I can nowadays I think it's a lot tougher because you know, you see all the negative and the bad and all this, so you're like, man, you know, to just keep my eyes on them, you know, and keep him with me, then I can overcome, or I can whatever challenge it. But back then they had it right in front of them and they couldn't do it. So it's crazy to think that we can do it in our daily walk, you know, because I mean, no, we're not gonna do it.
For us, it is more about faith because they saw it. They were there, and it was still hard for them. For us, our strength has to be stronger because we can't see it. We weren't there. But they're still struggling. And the Pharisees, they never got past it. Most of them never got past it. Certainly Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea, they both got past it. They were Pharisees. They were on the Sanhedrin. But the rest of them, they saw what he did, and they said, "You're sinning." What? I healed the guy's hand. Oh, you did it on the wrong day. You know, so you kind of look at that stuff and you go, but what had they seen? What had they seen? Were they just brand new, or had they seen a few things? Okay, so what had they seen? Let's look at some of those. Therefore, he came again to Cana of Galilee. So what's Cana of Galilee? What is that to Jesus? Home. Where he had made water into wine. And there was a royal official whose son was sick at Capernaum. When he heard that Jesus had come from Judea into Galilee, he went to him and began asking him to come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. Then Jesus said to him, unless you people see signs and wonders, you simply will not believe. So that's just kind of what we were just talking about, isn't it? Unless you see some sort of sign and wonder, you're not going to believe. And he's kind of frustrated because he says, even when I do it, you're not going to believe. But where did he pick up his disciples at? What part of the country? Galilee. That's where he picked them all up. This guy's heard of it. Probably the talk all the way around is, wow, we heard about this guy Jesus and what he did, and turned water into wine at a wedding, because that was his first one. So this man's come about his son who is sick, who's really sick. Now, he hadn't done any healings of someone who's sick that we know of, wasn't recorded. But imagine, I think the disciples, or who were going to become the disciples, might have heard some of the scuttlebutt. But we haven't picked up any disciples yet. This is right at the beginning of his ministry. So the royal official said to him, "Sir, come down before my child dies." Jesus said to him, "Go, your son is alive." The man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him and went home. There's an example of faith. And as he was going down, his slaves met him, saying that his son was alive. So he inquired of them the hour that it began to get better. They said to him, "Yesterday, at the 7th hour, the fever left him." So the father knew that it was the hour in which Jesus said to him, "Your son is alive." And he himself believed, and his entire household. This is again the second sign that Jesus performed when he had come from Judea into Galilee. So it's really early. It's the second sign that he's done. But word is spreading. Move on to the next one in Mark. They went into Capernaum, And immediately on the Sabbath, Jesus entered the synagogue and began to teach. And they were amazed at his teaching, for he was teaching them as one having authority and not as the scribes. Just then there was a man in their synagogue with an unclean spirit. He cried out, saying, "What business do you have with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." And Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be quiet and come out of him." After throwing him into convulsions and crying with a loud voice, the unclean spirit came out of him. And they were amazed, so that they debated among themselves, "What is this? A new teaching with authority. He commands, and even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." So where's he at? Home. And where's he at now? He's in synagogue, right? And when he reads something out of a book, he explains it. As opposed to, let me read it, and everybody goes, uh-huh. He's explaining it. And there happens to be a man there with an unclean spirit. So he throws the unclean spirit out. Immediately, the news about him spread everywhere into all the surrounding region of Galilee. So, where he did it with the noblemen, where he did it at the wedding in Cana, now he's done one in the synagogue, and word goes everywhere about what he's done. And immediately after they left the synagogue, they entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law was lying sick with a fever, and he immediately spoke to Jesus about her. And he came to her and raised her up, taking her by the hand, and the fever left her, and she served them. I always thought it was interesting that they put her right to work after they got her up. So, now, who has direct interface with him that should have understood? Who's Simon? Peter. And Peter's brother, Andrew. And the sons of thunder, James and John. 4 of the disciples, right there in the house, early in his ministry. But now they know who he is, and they're going to follow him. So this is a while before it gets to the point where he walks on water. So they're starting to see, they've heard about the stuff, now they're part of understanding it, what was going on. Again in Mark, he entered the synagogue again, and there was a man whose hand was withered. So we have this one we talk about a lot. And they were watching him closely to see if he would heal him on the Sabbath. Who are those that were watching him closely? The Pharisees. The leaders of the synagogue, which probably was no doubt Pharisees. Did he not see you? I mean, she's wearing that bright salmon-covered T-shirt.
I don't notice much.
And you were trying to come in subtly, weren't you?
I was.
Yeah. How'd that work?
Not well.
So they were watching him to see if he would heal on the Sabbath because it would be a good thing.
Because they were at Jesus.
They wanted to accuse him of doing something wrong. Hey, what's happened in the synagogues? How are things set up until this point? Who's the focus of everything? The leaders, the Pharisee, the one who reads the book, and the scribes. Okay? Their authority is shown by how well they read the scriptures and voice inflection and how they clearly say what's in the scriptures, and because a lot of people may not read. So they were the focus of everything. Huh?
They don't have access either.
Yeah. So now this guy's in here. We got to find a way to stamp this out. He's getting the attention. He's getting the authority. Look, we got to do something to get rid of him. So they might accuse him. Accuse him of what? No, not blasphemy of the Son.
Breaking the Sabbath.
Oh, breaking the Sabbath.
Breaking the Sabbath. Okay. So, where is this in Deuteronomy? Or Leviticus? Isn't in Deuteronomy and Leviticus, the way they interpreted it. Remember, I talked about this on Wednesday, and I remembered both. There's the Gemara and there's the Talmud. I just don't remember which is which. You might know which is which. Which is the interpretation of the law and which is the interpretation of the interpretation? You don't remember either? It's one of those two. But they interpreted the law, and that was one. I think that was the Talmud. And then the interpretation was the Gemara. One of those books is where he violated the law. But he didn't do anything wrong according to Leviticus or Deuteronomy.
Talmud's like 2nd, 5th century teachings of the Torah. The rabbinic remains.
Yeah. So they want to accuse him according to their interpretation of the law, their opinion of what it says, their opinion of what working is on the Sabbath, as opposed to what it really is. So, he said to the man with the withered hand, "Get up and come forward." And he said to them, "Is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath or to do harm, to save a life or to kill?" But they kept silent. If they really wanted the truth, what should they have done?
Jesus, what are you doing?
He asked them a question. Is it good? Is it wrong? Or is it right to do good, to do harm, to give life, to kill? He didn't answer it. They didn't answer anything.
They couldn't answer it without admitting that what he was doing was not wrong.
No, they couldn't. They couldn't. And it was like, the trap is set. Do you think they brought the man in with the withered hand?
Yeah,
More than likely.
yeah.
So, after looking around at them in anger, grieved with their hardness of the heart, he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." And he stretched it out, and his hand was restored. The Pharisees went out and immediately began conspiring with Herodians against him, as to how they might put him to death. Really early in his ministry, and he's gone here, he's got to at least have Peter and Andrew and James and John with him, because he picked them up, and I'm sure they just glued themselves to him and just followed him. So at least 4 of the disciples are here to see this. And it's interesting the way Christ responds to him with he's angry and he's hurt because of the way they treat a brother. Something's been done great for a brother, and they look for it to say, there's something we can exploit. We can exploit his compassion. We can exploit his kindness. Ignore the fact that they never seen power like that except from God. They just ignored that and said, we're going to put him to death because he's messing things up for us.
Because it's not the way they were used to it.
No.
That's it. That was the only thing. They just weren't used to it. So they just instantly.
To them, power was something they really sought after. Money was probably right up there with it, but power and money was what they really wanted. But another one. Jesus withdrew to the sea with his disciples, so now he's picked them up. And a large multitude from Galilee followed, and also from Judea. So now he's pulling up from Galilee. How far is it from Galilee down to Judea? What's in the middle between Galilee and Judea? Samaria, yeah. This is no short trip. This is a long trek. And people have come up from, now you say Jerusalem, from Edema, and beyond the Jordan, in the vicinity of Tyre and Sidon. So Tyre and Sidon is over on the coast. So they're coming from there. They're coming from the south. They're coming from everywhere because they've heard about this. A great number of people have heard everything that he was doing and came to him. And he told his disciples to see that a boat would be ready for him because of the masses, so that they would not crowd him. What does it mean by crowd him?
They were all wanting to be in his vicinity. I mean, just
As close to him as they could get, they were going to get. And he couldn't talk to anybody if they were going to do that. For he had healed many, with the result that all those who had diseases pushed in and around him in order to touch him. And whenever the unclean spirits saw him, they would fall down before him and shout, "You are the Son of God." And he strongly warned them not to reveal who he was. Why is that? Why wouldn't you want anybody to know?
They weren't doing it out of worship.
No, they don't. No, they weren't. They were exclaiming to say, "We know who you are." Okay, there wasn't a belief on their part. They knew it. Wasn't his time. At this particular point, he was healing on whatever day it was, and he was doing other things. He hadn't declared who he was. Because what would they have said? What was he tried for? Blasphemy. And that blasphemy was, "I'm the Son of God." Okay, so he said, don't tell anybody. In Luke, further on, we still have it. And when day came, he called his disciples to him and chose the 12 of them, whom he named as apostles. And this is the point where they become his inner circle. Simon, whom he named Peter, and his brother Andrew, James and John, and Philip and Bartholomew, and Matthew and Thomas, James the son of Alphaeus, and Simon, who is also called the Zealot, Judas, the son of James, and Judas Iscariot, who became a traitor. And then Jesus came down with them and stood at a level place. And there was a large crowd of his disciples and a great multitude of people from all Judea and Jerusalem, and the coastal region of Tyre and Sidon. So he's up in the northwest part of the peninsula. Not peninsula, the country. Who had come to hear him and to be healed of their diseases. And those who were troubled by unclean spirits were being cured. And all the people were trying to touch him because his power was coming from him and healing them all. So he comes down to a level place. You know what this was about? Huge crowds come from all over the country.
maybe you want everybody to be able to see him. I don't know.
There's about 4,000 of them. A lot of people.
Seems like an amphitheater too, probably, right? He's on level ground.
They're all on level ground. He's on the plain. I call this instead of the one on the mountain, it's the one on the plain. It's a sermon on the plain. Because it's level. There's not sermon on the mountain. He's not on a mountain, but he goes on a boat. And he goes out little ways, drop the anchor, and he's out there, and they can all hear him, but they're all there on that level ground. And they're all there, and they're seeing all of the things that he's doing, all the people that he's healing, all the spirits that he's driving out while he's there. Should have been soaking it in, but they weren't. On that day, when evening came, he said to them, "Let's go over to the other side." Now, what sea is this? Galilee, okay? It's in the region of Galilee, so that's kind of a dead giveaway. Let's go over to the other side. After dismissing the crowd, they took him along with them in the boat, just as he was, and other boats were with him. And a fierce gale wind developed, not this gale, and developed waves were breaking over the boat so much that the boat was already filling with water. And yet Jesus himself was in the stern, asleep on a cushion. And they woke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" And he got up, he rebuked the wind, said to the sea, "Hush, be still." And the wind died down, and it became perfectly calm. And he said to them, "Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They became very much afraid and said to one another, "Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?"
Still not believing all the way.
Still having a hard time with this one to say, wow, we saw him heal sick people. We saw him throw out demons, but we've never seen him talk to the waves. We've never seen him talk to the sea, the wind. And he just says, "Hush, be still." We're on glass water.
Couldn't you just see him? They wake him up, he gets up, he makes this statement, and then he lays back down on the cushion.
Yeah, he probably did.
Goes back to sleep.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me a little bit the other night when I talked about Jonah is everybody's throwing stuff off the side of the ship and everybody like that. What's Jonah? Jonah's below deck. He's asleep. Kind of the same thing. But again, here they've seen his command over water in the Sea of Galilee. They witnessed it. But again, it's sometimes you just can't get through.
I was going to say, I think that they are starting to understand the Son of God, but not understanding He is also God. They're not making that connection.
No, they don't understand. They don't understand who he is. They say, "You are God," but are you really the God that we've been waiting for? Could you be him? We've been waiting for hundreds of years. We've been waiting ever since the promise came in. The promise came to Abraham. "Through your seed, all mankind will be blessed."
It's crazy because they know that, like they keep seeing all this, but then they know that that's the son of Mary and Joseph, and
Yeah.
they know he comes from Galilee.
I knew his mom.
So-
I knew his dad.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's making it hard to make all the connections.
There's the house.
It keeps
There's-
that doubt floating up.
Yeah, there's a house his dad and him built. He's a carpenter. So they're really struggling. About this one. They came to the other side of the sea, into the region of Gersenes, wherever that is. When he got out of the boat, immediately a man from the tombs with an unclean spirit met him. He lived among the tombs, and no one was able to bind him anymore, not even with a chain, because he had often been bound with shackles and chains, and the chains had been torn apart by him and the shackles broken into pieces. And no one was strong enough to subdue him. Constantly, night and day, he was screaming among the tombs and the mountains and cutting himself with stones. Seeing Jesus from a distance, he ran up and bowed down before him, and shouting with a loud voice, he said, "What business do you have with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I implore you by God, do not torment me." Well, if anybody's going to let the cat out of the bag, he did. Since he's probably yelling when he's doing this.
It seems like when he comes in contact with the bad unclean spirits, that
They're scared.
Yeah.
Why are you here? What are you going to do? So they're frightened. And of course, this man has been like this. They don't say how long, but evidently the spirit has a lot of that unclean spirit or demon or whatever you want to call it, has imbued him with a lot of strength, but he tortures them constantly, cutting himself with stones. I can't believe he doesn't get hurt when he busts those chains. If you've ever pushed against something so hard to try and break it like that, what does it do? You get bruises, you may break a bone.
Don't give.
So he's constantly tortured by this spirit. So let's get a little bit more. For he had already been saying to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." And he was asking him, "What is your name?" And he said to him, "My name is Legion, for we are many." And he begged him earnestly not to send him out of the region. And there was a large herd of pigs feeding nearby in the mountain. And the demons begged him, saying, "Send us into the pigs so that we may enter them." Jesus gave them permission, and coming out, the unclean spirits entered the pigs. The pig herd rushed down the steep bank into the sea, about 2,000 of them, and they were drowned in the sea. Would this be good news for people in the region or bad news?
Food-wise, bad news.
Food
wise,
That's a lot of pork chops that just went over the side of that mountain. But here's a man, I mean, they've got a part of that area that nobody really goes in because you got this crazy guy there. He's screaming at people probably every time when they come in there. You don't know what he's going to do. They've tried to subdue him, and nobody could subdue him because Legion was in there. But the disciples are with him. They saw all this. Now the people come. What do the people do when they come? Would you please leave? So, the people saw them going, and many recognized them and ran there together on foot from all the cities and got there ahead of them. When Jesus went ashore, he saw a large crowd and he felt compassion for them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he left, moved over to somewhere else on the other side of the Galilee, and he began to teach them many things. And when it was very late, his disciples came up to him and said, "This place is secluded and it's already late. Send them away so they may go into the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat." But he answered them, "You give them something to eat." And they said to him, "Shall we go and spend 200 denarii on bread and give it to them to eat?" So what has he done here? Remember, this lake's 5.5 miles wide. So when he's out in a boat, they can kind of see him. When he comes out here and he goes over here, they're going. They're just moving as a crowd, wherever he's going. And he says he felt compassion. They were sheep like sheep without a shepherd. So he got to teach. Now, what did he come here to do? To heal or teach? Seek and save the lost. To be the light in the world. To teach people what God was about. Okay? Ultimately, he came to die and be resurrected, but what he's doing here is he's teaching. I didn't read the follow-on part when he was at Peter's mother-in-law's house, but he healed people after he healed the mother. He healed people, and then he went out the next day, and he went by himself, and he was off praying by himself. And the disciples went and found him. And they said, "Don't you know? We got a whole bunch of people there." He goes, "We're going somewhere else." Because he didn't come to heal people physically. He came to heal people spiritually, to teach them a way to the light.
When he said to them, "You give them something to eat," he wasn't necessarily talking about food.
No.
He'd been teaching.
Yeah. Give them some spiritual food. He's the bread of life. So, but he said to them, "How many loaves do you have? Go look." When they found out, they said, 5, and 2 fish. And he ordered them to all to recline by groups on the green grass. They reclined in groups of hundreds and fifties. And he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up towards heaven, he blessed the food and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples again and again to set before them. And he divided the 2 fish among them all, hundreds and fifties. And they all ate and were satisfied. And they picked up 12 full baskets of broken pieces of bread and of the fish. There were 5,000 men who ate the loaves. This is what occurred just before they left to go across the Sea of Galilee, and he walked on the water. Yet all those instances where they saw what he was doing, and I didn't include them all, and they still are having a hard time.
They never said, "You're the Son of God."
I mean, they heard it. They heard it from the demon-possessed man. But they still haven't gotten it yet.
There's so many people, though, you know, and how you always hear that people, you know, trying to touch his cloth or just, you know, get a word from him, or, you know, and you know, there's some that when they have faith, he heals them through the faith. So with 5,000 people there, how many people are calling out in spirit, you know? He'll be, you know, because he could have been healing. So, because you got demons people falling, you know, and he's just over here, just speaking.
You got a crippled child. What are you going to do? Are you going to pick him up? Try and find, I mean, it might not work, but it might work. I've heard he heals people. Let's get him there, you know? Because, was it the pool of Siloam at Bethlehem? Okay. Because what it supposedly was, the pool of Siloam at Bethlehem, if you saw it get stirred and you were the first one in the water, you'd be healed. But it was a one-shot deal. You know, one person got in, that person got healed, nobody else got healed. Everybody had to wait. This was everybody who could, in their minds, even if I can just get in his shadow, I'll be healed. I can touch his robe. And everybody was touching his robe. And they were healed. So what were they missing? Power? They were missing faith. How hard is it for you to develop faith if it's right there in front of you?
Believing in him.
I mean, if you're there, you see it and everything like that, that's not faith. Because you see it. It's if you've never seen it and you believe it, that's faith. They were missing the whole point as far as what he was there to do. Because like I said, after he healed at Peter's mother-in-law's house, and he left, they said, oh, we got to come back, more people to heal. And he said, that's not why I'm here.
No.
He came to the Jews to heal them spiritually, to show them the way, to be the good shepherd. And it was strictly for the Jews. Remember when he went over to Sidon, I think. It wasn't Tyre, it was Sidon. And he withdrew from everybody because everywhere he went, he got mobbed. Everywhere he went. So he went over there. And there was a woman whose daughter was sick, right? Yeah, daughter was sick, a Gentile. And he said, what do I have to do with you? And she says, why should I give my bread to you? In other words, the things that I brought to the Jews, why should I give it to you? This is the faith of the Gentile. Because she hadn't been around the crowds, because they didn't like Gentiles. And when he said, why should I share the bread with you? She goes, even the dogs get the crumbs. And he said, yep, your daughter's healed. So she hadn't seen it, but she heard about it. She heard about something that was unbelievable. Nobody's ever seen anything like this. Except for maybe the pool, but that was, like a one-shot deal. Not where thousands of people were all coming out and hundreds were being healed. Nobody had ever seen that. Still, the point they missed was he came here to show God, not to heal people.
He had love for us.
Yeah, he did. He had compassion. He had compassion on the man with the withered hand.
And then, when I hear that, and then I think, okay, so you have love for your child, you have love for your mother, you have love for your brother. That love, I don't know, if you put that love into Jesus, I don't know what I'm trying to say. My mind's all over the place right now. So but it's all in good. It's
good.
It's
That's
just,
good.
It's thinking all around. Need some water.
I don't know when they're going to break us.
Last time was about this time.
About now?
Last time it was.
They got the stuff out there?
Yep, there's
All right. You guys want to break for 20 minutes? Because we're done tonight by 8, so we got time.
We got pimento cheese.
They got the good stuff tonight, right? We're done tonight by 8.
Ostensibly.
That's the plan.
That's the plan. You're right, though. Mute button. It's weird. Mute button's on and mic was hot. It's not working. At least it's failing on, not failing off.
I'm the only one that
We might not want him unmuted talking.
It's true. Could be some revealing discussions. All right,
Yeah,
we can pick up.
I don't know if that's going to take me.
So,
Yeah.
the point they were missing.
You don't like getting out of
The point they were missing.
the faith that they didn't have any faith in him.
They couldn't accept who he was.
Him. No faith. Him.
Let's go back to this one. In John, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him. And apart from him, not even one thing came into being that has come into being. In him was life, and the life was the light of mankind. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not grasp it. Let's take it apart a little bit. What beginning?
The word. What is the word?
Yeah, what beginning?
Love.
The?
He was in the beginning.
The beginning of what? Creation. What are they doing?
Security team's going crazy.
Yeah, count it out.
That has to be Clayton.
They don't care at all.
Yeah, there you go. They're having a blast. Okay, so beginning was the beginning of creation. And he was with God, and he was God. So, what was he doing? Huh? Creating. Always interesting. In the beginning. So, what was before the beginning?
I am.
Nothing.
Titus talked about that.
Who? Titus?
He said, before the foundation of the world, that's when God was making promises.
It was simply existence without time, right? Isn't that where we go to when we move out of this plane? Beginning is only with reference to the creation, because outside of the creation, there is no beginning, because there's no end. Paul talks about it a little bit more in Colossians. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created, both in the heavens and on the earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. He's the head of the body, the church, and he is the beginning, the firstborn of the dead, so that he himself will come to have first place in everything. For it was the Father's good pleasure for the fullness, for all the fullness to dwell in him, and through him reconcile all things to himself, whether things on earth or things in heaven, having made peace through the blood of his cross. I've heard Not much, but I've heard one or two sermons that says Jesus didn't exist before he came here, which isn't what this says. He's the image of the invisible God. Why?
Like God made.
No, it's not why he's the image though. God did make it, but why is he the image? Why can't we see God? This is easy. He's invisible. When Elijah wanted to see him, what did he do? He said, "You can see my back.
You can see
Can't see my face." Well, they saw his hands in Babylon, his finger. But they didn't see his face. What happens if you see his face?
You die.
You die. But how is he the image?
He's the character. He holds the same character traits. He has the same characteristics in human form that we can visibly see.
What did Jesus do really for himself? Everything he did the will of the Father. Everything he did was the will of the Father. So by seeing what he does, you see the Father. Because he always did his will. So he created the heavens and the earth, visible and invisible. What would be invisible to them at that time?
Gravity. Wind,
Gravity,
radio waves.
radar waves. Huh? Yeah. How about atoms? We can look at electrons now. All kinds of powerful stuff to look at stuff. But to them, that was invisible. Going back to Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was formless and desolate emptiness, and darkness was over the surface of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, one day. So where was the Spirit? Of the surface of the water. So there was just water, right? Who said, "Let there be light"? Who? God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit. He's the Word. He said, "Let there be light." In Colossians, all things were created through him, by him, for him. He's doing the will of the Father. That's how the Godhead fits together. The will is the Father. The Word is the Son. The Spirit is what makes it happen. And they all work as one.
Job said, "Show us the Father and it'll be plenty."
Yeah.
And Jesus said, "If you've seen me, you've seen the Father."
Yep. Because everything I do is what he wants. And they have the embodiment of the Son and the Spirit in front of them. I'm still going, don't get it. This was the part they were having a hard time getting past. The Creator of everything is standing in front of me. He wants to wash my feet? Really? They didn't understand. how that being could be so humble and so serving and be the one that spoke the creation into existence. That's kind of hard to wrap your head around. So you kind of cut them a little bit of a slack to say it was just too hard for them to understand. I'm a simple fisherman. Why me? And he picked some good ones. He picked Judas, who was a thief. So when did he begin to display the power of God? When he came here?
In the beginning?
When he was born?
No. After he was born.
Okay. It was after he was born. You're right there.
Wedding at Cana was his first miracle.
That was his first miracle. How did he know when he was 12 about my Father's business? Was his knowledge miraculous?
Yeah.
Or did he know who he was?
I think he knew who he was.
How about yes?
How about yeah? Okay, because he did not do anything up until the point where he was ready to start his ministry, did he?
Yeah.
Who else knew who he was?
And Mom.
His mom.
Satan.
Huh?
Satan.
Satan knew who he was. Demons knew who he was. How about John? John was about 3 months older than him. So when John was with Elizabeth and Jesus was in Mary, and I know you women love this one, when, I don't know what John did, when he tried to do a backflip or whatever, when he figured out who it was that he was in the presence of, he knew who he was. Jesus knew who he was. I don't think there was any miraculous about what he knew because he knew who he was. He was man and God. So when did he begin to, you said the wedding at Cana. It's only in John, the book of John, too. How about this one? The Spirit of the Lord came upon me, because the Lord anointed me to bring good news to the humble. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim release to captives and freedom to prisoners. So who was Isaiah talking about? He's talking about the Messiah. He's talking about Jesus. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me because of the Lord. How did that happen? He shows his mission here to bring good news to the humble, to bind up the brokenhearted. Why were the people brokenhearted?
With extra laws and rules laid on by the
Yeah, they're
Pharisees
terrible
and
rules.
Sadducees.
What was the what do I call it? The common knowledge everybody had as to say whether you're of God or not of God. If you were poor, you must have done something wrong. You can't be of God, okay? This person over here, they're rich, they've got power, they've got everything. Oh, they must be really godly.
No, not always.
How brokenhearted to those people be to say, I can't get out of this either. I don't know what I did, but I must have done something wrong. And he went to say, it isn't about that. It's about your faith. It's about your heart towards God. It isn't about how much stuff you got. So he was going to release them from captivity. Captivity under the law to a law of freedom. Freedom as prisoners from being away from God and from being taught by people who weren't bringing them to God, they were bringing them away from God. They were driving them away because they were making it so hard.
When Jesus was getting ready to heal the man who had been blind from birth, Peter said, Okay, what did he do or what did his parents do?
Yep. Yeah. And he said neither, so my power could be shown. And that was an interesting story. Mom and Dad says, we don't want to have anything to do with it. So, then Jesus arrived from Galilee at the Jordan, coming to John to be baptized. But John tried to prevent him, saying, I have the need to be baptized by you, and yet you are coming to me? But Jesus answering him said to him, allow it at this time, for in this way it is fitting for us to fulfill all righteousness. Then he allowed him, and he was baptized. Jesus came up immediately out of the water, and behold, the heavens were opened, and he saw the Spirit of God descending as a dove and settling on him. And behold, a voice from the heaven said, this is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. What happened here? Huh?
What it said in Isaiah.
The Spirit came on him. Okay, up in that time, he didn't have the Spirit with him. But this is when the Spirit came to him. And following this was the wedding at Cana. But it's interesting, descending like a dove, settled on him. And he said to fulfill all righteousness. He set the way for us. He set the path. He says, I'm not going to ask you to do anything I wouldn't be willing to do. You know, always interesting when people talk about baptism and say, which is what he was, well, works can't save you. And I think, how is baptism a work? What did you do? You got stiff so somebody could grab you and push you in the water. That's a work. You held your breath. Hopefully you held your breath. How is that a work? So, this is the wedding at Cana. And I'm letting you out a little bit early. On the third day, it always is a problem with this. Otherwise, we would have just had 2 slides and they really would let you out early. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. And both Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding. When the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, they have no wine. Jesus said to her, what business do you have with me, woman? I'm sure she gave him the look like moms give look. My hour has not yet come. His mother said to the servants, whatever he tells you to do, do it. Why do you think he said what he said? Why did she think he could do that? She knew who he was, but she'd never seen him do anything. She'd heard him teach, and she knew, okay.
It's a weird thing to ask for the first time.
Well, yeah, it's like we're at this wedding here, and it's a big wedding. It's a big deal. When they had a wedding, it was days together. And they ran out of wine. And his response is, what business do you have with me, woman? Why are you telling me what to do in my ministry? I don't think he meant to be surly. He was saying, I'm not ready to go do it.
Yeah, and when he was little, like you said, when he was little, his parents went looking for him because he'd been off on his own for preaching.
Well, he stayed there and taught. Yeah, he stayed there, stayed behind. And of course, when they traveled in a big group. And so it was a couple of days before they figured out, wait a minute, he's not with Aunt such and such or Uncle such and such.
Yeah, they couldn't find him. And they reached him because he was preaching.
He was teaching. He was teaching. But this is his first, well, it says on the next one here. Now there were 6 stone pots standing there for the Jewish custom of purification, containing 2 or 3 measures each. Jesus said to them, fill the water pots with water. So they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, draw some out now and take it to the head waiter. They took it to him. Now when the head waiter tasted the water, which had become wine, and did not know where it had come from, but the servants who had drawn the water knew, the head waiter called the groom and said to him, every man serves good wine first, and when the guests are drunk, then he serves the poorer wine, but you have kept the good wine until now. This beginning of his signs Jesus did in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. So even going back to who was there, and I don't know which one of the disciples were there, they believed him. But they went in and out, and in and out. Matter of fact, even after he came back and he visited them after coming up from the cross, he still went in and out. For another, is it 50 days? 50 days. Then the Spirit came in them and they understood. So, I'm glad I started with the one slide that was him walking on water first. Comments? We got about 8 minutes, supposedly.
Even like this one, this and walking on the water, calming the storm. There, you can see their creation type miracles. The healing ministry. I guess it's the same thing, but this comes before the healing ministry. It's just different. A different skill set. I don't know what is the right word, but it's, even though it all shows God the Creator, this is just a different thing.
Well, they had the Pentateuch, and they had the prophets, and they had I think all the history books at that particular time, all the way through Micah? Yeah, Micah. But would they have put it together and said, oh, that word that was talking in the beginning of Genesis was him? That's what they couldn't put together.
Isn't that what the 2 men after he was resurrected, it says that he tells them how all the previous scriptures pointed to.
Yeah. But he didn't reveal himself. Until he did, when he did, he was gone. Which must have spooked those 2 guys pretty good. For 2 reasons. The way he just vanished in front of their eyes. But also, we know who we were just talking to. We just spent hours walking with him and listening to him. Because they turned around and came back. Said, we saw him. We just spent the last 3 hours with him.
When they're looking for that warrior, it was, this is all much different than that. As a warrior, I don't know, there's old battles in Joshua and stuff like that, which they defeat great armies with very few soldiers, but if to show God the Creator, it would have been even a greater thing. But this is how he decided to show it.
Well, you see it all the way through. And with all the things that were shown as far as signs, not even Satan figured out that he's going to play a role in salvation, and he thinks he's destroying it. He thought he had stamped out God. And it was all in the plan. It was always in the plan. Well, I'll let you go now, because that is my last slide.